guys, I'm back again with another episode of our video series. Today I'll be speaking with Álvaro Rodríguez Resino, who is a blockchain enthusiast and an entrepreneur based in Crypto Valley, Switzerland. We will talk about the industries blockchain can disrupt apart from finance and where blockchain is going in terms of business models. So stick around while we join him on call. Hi Álvaro, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, great. Let's start the conversation by talking about the core business functions that blockchain can replace or improve.
Okay, the core business function. This is a tricky question because right now we are still trying to figure out how to apply the blockchain for business purposes. But I think that right now we can understand that the blockchain is useful for several things. For instance, the blockchain is really useful to prevent the double spending problem. This is really useful for the financial purposes, for exchanges, for payments, etc. And it's one of the core advantages of the blockchain right now. Other advantage is probably both the immutability and the transparency of the blockchain that allows to track digital assets through all the blockchain in a real time and with full transparency for all the players involved. This is the main feature or the main features behind the application of the blockchain for the supply chain industry. And the third application could be in regards of identity. The blockchain, as you might know, works in the following way. Every individual or company interacting with a blockchain has to do that through a unique address with a long alphanumerical hash. This unique address is the only thing you need to interact with the blockchain, and you don't need to disclose the rest of your personal information for that. So this feature is called pseudo anonymity, and it's really useful to control the data you share with other people in the blockchain. And it's very different from the regular data management we are used to today on the internet. This feature is really interesting to create new digital ID services where people basically are handling or storing their own data in their own servers or their own devices, and they are just sharing this data with whoever they are interacting with in the blockchain. This is really interesting. Many people are trying to develop this kind of application from the customer side, but I think it's more interesting for a company to do that. For me, and right now, these are the three main applications right now of the blockchain, those that are working now. And I think that probably we will see that in the near future, we will start using the blockchain to build network effects. Network effects is the effect that is behind the power of businesses like Amazon or other marketplace. Basically, a network effect is an effect where the more people you aggregate into a network of users, sellers, or buyers, the more value this network has for other people to come. So I think that right now the network effects are thriving all over the world as a digital business model. And I do believe that the blockchain will have a really interesting, the blockchain will be really interesting in that regard in the near future. For me, these are basically these four applications of the blockchain right now.
So could you just make this a little easy for people to understand how blockchain would change the business models as we have it today?
Well, I think that from my point of view, first we need to understand how a business model works. Okay, basically a business model is at the core of the business model. You have the value proposition to a particular kind of customers, and then for this value proposition, you have to provide like key resources, key activities. You have to run partnerships and expend money for that to provide this value proposition. And also to get to your customers, you need to there are several specific interactions with the customers through specific channels and with a monetization strategy for that. So my understanding is that the blockchain can change the the business models in several ways. For instance, if you go to the part of the resources and the activities needed to provide the value to a customer, the blockchain can be a driver for efficiency. You can create more efficient processes with the blockchain in some businesses like the financial or the supply chain business. Right now, people are starting to work with that. I think that especially corporations are working on that regard. Okay, they are trying to improve the way their supply chain, or sorry, their value chain works with the blockchain. And the second part is that the second way to change the business model with the blockchain goes more to the value proposition of the business model itself. So, for instance, you have like a regular business model with a very specific value proposition, and when applying blockchain, you can evolve the value proposition, or you can change the value proposition in a way that is better than before, and is completely changing the business model. One example could be, right now, this is the use case for that is still not really clear, but for instance, in some cases, the supply chain is going to be completely disrupted by the blockchain in terms of value proposition. And I think that also some financial applications like payments, or like some kind of, unlike the STOs that come in, probably they also will change not only the technology behind the value proposition, but the value proposition itself.
The thing is, the general idea is that people are very wary of blockchain and cryptocurrency in general. So have you personally come across any questions or queries regarding, say, the digital trust and information security, say, from suppliers or customers or service providers?
Well, I think that in regards of trust, everybody says that the blockchain is a machine of trust, which is true, but also we need to understand that, for instance, many people out there, especially customers, they don't really care about who is providing trust. I mean, billions of people are using Amazon or the e-commerce marketplace, Alibaba. They're using other services with middlemen, and these middlemen are the main source of trust. So, and the people is still happy with that. Okay, so I don't think that right now there is a huge demand for new trust solutions out there. In the corporate world, probably it's different. For instance, if you can make a B2B business work better with removing middlemen and removing fees while you maintain the trust, this probably is will be much more appreciated by the companies than for the customers outside. So this is my understanding right now in regards to trust and what trust means, and what people and companies are really demanding about trust. I'm going to give you an example. For instance, right now, some people during the last ICO craze, some people tried to create like decentralized social media applications because they say that Facebook is not trustful, and doing that through a decentralized way will be much valuable for the people. All these projects failed because basically people doesn't really care about who's providing the trust. It could be either the company, or it could be either a blockchain. They are just they are only concerned about the value the application has and how it works and the UX. Okay, but for instance, for companies, the trust issue is much more important. For instance, for a supply chain application that provides a transparent tracking of the goods from all over the world, from one point to another, without a middleman, and in a more reliable way, and probably with more speed for a company. This kind of trust solution is more important than for the consumer.
So another thing about the trust is a lot of ICOs last year, they turned out to be scams. So if an investor has to put his money into an ICO, what are the things he should look for?
I think that right now, I personally wouldn't invest in an ICO right now. I will invest in an STO, because the STO basically were most of them were scams, because not only because they were scammers, but only because many people build a white paper or write down a white paper in good faith, thinking that the project was feasible, and finally they found that the blockchain technology wasn't mature enough yet to build this kind of application. So basically, they fail and people lost their money. Of course, there were also scammers with in bad faith took the money of the people. So I wouldn't invest right now in ICO with a white paper and just with a promise of a product like in 2017. This makes no sense. Right now, I will invite in projects with either a minimum viable product or with a great team who can show that they can make this happen. Okay, so right now the investors are getting more sophisticated, and people are basically looking for real projects with real products. So this is the best advice I can give. Go for real projects with real products. The second advice will be that always carefully check the team. Most of the people during the past 2 years tried to disrupt many industries without a real knowledge about the real problems, issues, and hurdles of the industry. So, for instance, many people tried to solve the problems of the energy industry or the media industry, and in most of the cases, the teams were comprised just by developers or marketers without a real knowledge of the industry they were trying to disrupt. And this brought a lot of problems because you need to clearly understand the industry in order to change that. So my second advice will be that if somebody claims that he or she is going to change the industry, he or she should provide proof that he really knows the industry. So the experience of the people is also really important.
Speaking of STOs, now this is a very controversial area once again about regulations and all. There are a lot of countries which do not encourage STOs at all. So where do you think we are in terms of regulation, and which parts of the world will we see more, adopting STOs more?
Well, I'm based in Europe, and so my understanding is that the STOs are maturing enough in Europe, because right now you can run an STO in several countries. This is still not the case in the US, where the regulation is still a long way behind Europe. And in Asia, in some places like Singapore, probably the regulator will be more keen to make this happen. So people have to understand that regulation has its own pace, so you can force that. So the places where the ICO started before, and where the people started to work on this ecosystem before, like Switzerland, like Malta, like Estonia, other European countries, these places are where the STOs are now really ready to go. In fact, there are already several platforms in Europe with the knowledge and the capabilities to launch a proper STO. In the US, it will take a few months or almost a year, and in China it's difficult to say, because the information we have is not that clear for the people who are in Europe. But I do think that also in China will come probably in a few years. But right now, the STO is basically maturing in Europe, and after that will mature in the US, in my opinion.
So a lot of banks are adopting blockchain and cryptocurrencies for cross-border remittances and stuff. So how do banks stand to benefit from this?
Well, I think that right now the banks are basically moving into the blockchain. I think that first we have to to understand that it's not the same a commercial bank than an investment bank. So I think that the commercial banks right now are working with the blockchain in two ways. The first one is payments. Santander, BBVA, other European banks are exploring Ripple technology to make payments, international payments and international settlements. And also they're exploring how to automate the settlement of loans for companies throughout the same economic space. For instance, there is a company called WeTrade. This is a joint venture between several banks in the European Union, and they are exploring how to set up a system to do automatic settlements for loans, commercial loans within the European Union. So they will improve the process quite a lot. The second part is that I'm moving into the investment bank. The investment bank basically are exploring both the exchanges. For instance, Goldman Sachs has been buying exchanges and has purchased Bitfinex some time ago. So they are moving into the exchanges ecosystem, and also they are moving into the tokenization ecosystem. But for banks, it's really interesting to tokenize investment and to bring liquidity into assets which otherwise won't be that liquid. For instance, they are moving really quickly into the real estate ecosystem to tokenize real estate, and also they are considering the tokenization of debt and equity.
So exactly how does blockchain help manage liquidity and cross-border payment?
The blockchain, well, cross payments, basically the blockchain is quite easy. The blockchain is a shared ledger, so the settlement of the transfers, even international transfers, takes a few seconds or a few minutes compared to the settlements done through other systems, who probably will take a lot of around 1 hour or two, sorry, 1 day or 2 days. This is the first thing. And in terms of liquidity, well, liquidity is not about technology. Liquidity is about the market. So you can have a blockchain, but that doesn't mean that you will have liquidity. Liquidity comes from an offer of, let's say, like a tokens or like an equity, and a demand of investors who want to trade this offer, these tokens or this equity, so or whatever financial asset you want to trade. So I think that the blockchain could enable liquidity, but it's not the only condition for that. So you need also other players in the market, and you need like an offer side and a demand side. Saying that, okay, with the blockchain, the technology itself can be, in my opinion, more useful to create liquidity in a more transparent way. And this is important also for the financial markets. And the blockchain could improve the way we create liquidity, because settlement in the blockchain is something that has many advantages compared to the legacy systems. But right now, for instance, for the financial business, liquidity in the blockchain is still something, it's still weak and thin. We need still to grow the market, but it will come eventually.
Right. So blockchain has a lot of advantages, but honestly, is it really necessary? I mean, why do we even need scalability and interoperability? I mean, can't we just be happy with the current payment systems that we have?
Well, this is a really good question. You don't have to apply a blockchain to everything, okay? The blockchain is not a magic wand which is going to solve the world problems, like the world hunger and these kind of things. But the blockchain could be really useful for several industries and businesses out there, and we need scalability to create real consumer applications. Right now, it's quite difficult to create a consumer application with a blockchain because of the scalability issues, especially with the proof of work blockchain or proof of work based blockchain. And also interoperability is something that has been around for a while. And this is something really interesting and something that people like the Web3 Foundation is working with. And it will be a huge step forward to make blockchain operate between themselves. So for instance, the Ethereum network can communicate with EOS or with Hyperledger, etc., or with other open or semi-permissioned blockchain. But the thing is that, yeah, also my understanding is that the blockchain, the different blockchains protocols are going to specialize in different verticals. For instance, we will have a blockchain for financial applications. We have a blockchain for some kind of supply chain applications. We have a blockchain for gaming, for gambling, other blockchain for consumer applications in e-commerce, for instance. And it seems that the blockchains are getting specialized in some ways. Okay, for instance, the Ethereum is specialized on finance as well as Bitcoin. The EOS, most of the dApps are basically gaming and gambling. For supply chain, quite a lot of people is using Hyperledger, for instance. So my understanding is that during the next years, we won't see like a huge unique blockchain where everything will be stored. We will see different blockchains working for different purposes. And interoperability in this case doesn't really matter that much. So I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that we are going in that direction, that we will have different blockchains specialized in different businesses, and interoperability will be needed from only some kind of blockchain, but not for all of them. And this is the way we are going, I think.
So is it correct to think that blockchain is still in a gestation period? It's still very new, but
yeah, the blockchain the blockchain is still in its infancy. The blockchain is right now, we are exploring and making experiments, prototype the first blockchain, the first protocols, the first applications. And I think that also the maturity of the blockchain will start in the finance and the supply chain industry. Right now, in the finance industry, the mass adoption is coming, especially for trading and for financial assets. This is clear. Also, the maturity will come earlier on the supply chain business. This is clear for me. And maybe on the ID business, the digital ID business, the blockchain will mature soon. In other businesses like e-commerce, like marketing, social media, like advertisement, like all the kind of businesses you might find out there, the blockchain will mature later, and probably it won't be really important in many businesses, because you don't have to apply blockchain to everything. Okay, so yes, we are still in the infancy, but we are improving, and there are some businesses or industries where the blockchain is maturing sooner.
So that's the end of my list of questions. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for everything. It has been a pleasure.
So that's the end of today's conversation, and join me again next time as I speak with another blockchain expert about the industry and where it is going. And meanwhile, don't forget to check out our website as well, hashcashconsultants.com, and see what we are doing with blockchain. Pretty interesting stuff. Bye for now.